What's going on, everybody? Today I just want to break down my current mastery build. I've been using this build for about 2 months now. Basically, ever since Alliance Quest Map 7 was introduced, my alliance shifted focus away from being more focused on Alliance War to something that's more focused on Alliance Quest and maximizing the resources in other areas of the game as well. And as a result, I've shifted some points around in my mastery build to match our new goals. That's the first thing that I want you guys to keep in mind before I even get into my exact build here, is that there is no one mastery build for every single player, for every single situation. You want to pick masteries based on the champions that you have and what your goals are in this game. So with that in mind, let's get into my actual build here. My current mastery build is focused around the suicide masteries. The reason why this cluster of masteries has the nickname of suicides is because they all come with some sort of self-inflicting damage drawback to them in order to balance out just how powerful of boost they actually provide to your champions. So let's take a look at a mastery that's not part of the suicides first. Let's take a look at Greater Strength. This is a mastery that increases the attack of all of your champions by a small amount. You could put up to 9 points in this mastery for a total of 8% attack. Compare that to something like Liquid Courage, where for only 3 points, you gain 30% attack for all of your champions, and that is a night and day difference in terms of power levels between the two masteries. However, Liquid Courage comes with the drawback of now your champions suffer a permanent poison debuff. Now the damage from this poison debuff, it's a little bit deceiving. It's really not that bad actually. You can mostly balance that out with the willpower mastery. But what is not shown in the description of this mastery is just how poison works in Marvel Contest of Champions. Anytime you're suffering a poison debuff from any source, all of your healing is reduced by 30%. So now the trade-off is a little bit more apparent when you know that, right? Are you willing to sacrifice 30% of the healing that your champions gain to gain 30% attack? Well, in some cases you are, and in some cases you aren't. And that's kind of what makes masteries interesting, is that you have to make this choice. There are suicide-friendly champions that exist, however, and that term is mostly used around champions that have immunities to them. Sometimes they can also even gain bonus effects for having a poison on them or a bleed on them or something like that. But if you're using a poison immune champion, then you don't suffer any of the negative drawbacks from Liquid Courage. You just get to keep plus 30% attack as a lovely parting gift from Kabam. So depending on the champions they're using, you really don't feel these negative drawbacks nearly as much. Let's go over the other suicide masteries here, starting with Double Edge. Double Edge is very similar to Liquid Courage. This mastery also provides 30% attack for 3 points, but this time instead of a permanent poison, you're taking a very powerful bleed at the start of the fight. You're going to lose 20% of your health over the first 16 seconds. Now there's ways to reduce this. There's a mastery that reduces the amount of damage that you take from bleed effects. Certain champions are bleed immune, or other champions are bleed resistant, such as Omega Red, and actually gain a benefit when suffering from bleed. So again, depending on who you're using, the suicides, they're way more powerful for some champions than others. The worst part of the suicide masteries, and the mastery that most champions don't really have that good of a way to get around, is Recoil. Recoil says that anytime you use a special attack, well, it's going to hit a little bit harder, but you're also going to suffer 5% of your maximum health. It's just going to disappear after the animation of the special is over and done with. It only deals damage to you for the Special 1 and Special 2, so you do have a way to play around it. You can just use your Special 3, but for a lot of champions out there, you really want to be using Special 1s and 2s. A lot of the more powerful effects that you can get out of your specials, such as maybe a heal block ability on the Special 1, now you have to suddenly make that trade-off. Okay, do you want to apply a heal block? You're going to suffer some health loss, or do you just want to suffer through and maybe use your Special 3, or, kind of have to make that decision. The other way to play around Recoil, for when it comes to running all of your champions, not champion-specific at least, is to have your killing blow be with your special attack. So someone like Corvus, for example, has a very powerful Special 2 ability. If you save your Special 2, to when the enemy has a small amount of health left, a small enough amount of health that that Special 2 will kill them, then you're not going to suffer any of the damage from Recoil, because the fight's going to be over before that damage is inflicted to you. So there are ways to play around it, but Recoil, for the most part, is pretty nasty. So the nice part about these masteries, though, is that you don't always care about losing some health, such as when you're in the arena. Most arena fights end with your champions looking pretty healthy, and what you care about most is just getting through the fights as fast as possible. So I am more focused on arena these days. However, because I'm using champions like Omega Red or certain poison immune champions like Hyperion or Medusa, I don't mind having these masteries in other areas of the game. It'd be better in some cases to not have them, but for me it's worth the trade-off. Alright, so that's basically what this build is focused around. The rest of the points, for the most part, are kind of focused on supporting this build, or sometimes gaining other effects. But let's just break down the other ones a little bit quicker. So I do have the 1 point in glass cannon, just as a prerequisite. I don't like having more than 1 point here. You don't really feel the extra attack when you already have plus 60% from Liquid Courage and Double Edge. So I'd rather keep it to 1 point and put those points elsewhere in other masteries that are going to give me a little bit more power, such as Despair. Despair reduces the healing that the enemy gets by 15% per debuff when you have this mastery maxed out. A lot of the most difficult nodes in the game have to do with the enemy healing. So buffet, masochism, aggression regeneration, all these types of nodes can be pretty difficult if you don't have a way to reduce or stop or sometimes reverse that healing, which Despair can help out in all of these cases. If you don't have a lot of debuffs, well, at least you can reduce the healing a little bit, or if you have a lot of debuffs, you can reduce healing enough to completely turn it off, or if your champion comes in, has other abilities just built into their normal ability kit, such as Void, this can help you to reverse that healing as well. So extremely powerful mastery for only 3 points, no prerequisites other than having 15 points in the left half of the offensive tree here. Despair is one of my favorite masteries in the game. I don't have any points in Deep Wounds because I'm not really playing champions that have that strong of bleeds at the moment, but if I was, I would opt to put some points into Deep Wounds. I think it's exceptionally powerful if you're playing bleed-focused champions. But because a lot of the more difficult champions to fight in this game have bleed immunities, I tend to stay away from the champions that apply bleeds for the most part. I don't have any points in Assassin because, well, the Suicides just provide more attack, and hey, we only have so many points. Alright, moving on to the left half of the tree here. It's pretty standard. I have 5 points in Precision, 5 points in Cruelty. These are masteries that most players are running just because they're extremely powerful, no drawbacks to them, and most champions rely on critting to deal their damage. You know, if you compare the numbers between a crit and a non-crit, it's huge. In my opinion, it's a little bit too big in some cases where, you know, you might only be hitting for like 700 on a normal hit, but then you get lucky and land a critical hit and you hit for like 4,000. I don't know, I kind of wish there was a little bit of a better balance between the two, but hey, that's the way the game works. So the crit masteries are very powerful, very important to have. I also have 1 point into Courage. This mastery is also very powerful. 10% attack for only 1 point. That's right in line with the Suicide masteries. The drawback here is not self-inflicted damage, though. This time it's you only get this bonus when you're below 50% health. So therefore, I like to have 1 point in it because there's always times where you're going to be below 50% health. But maybe that's only for certain parts of the quest, maybe like the second half of it or something like that. And you know, I rather not put too many points in this mastery since I'm not always going to be feeling the effects of it. Even though I do think all 3 points can be worth it if you don't have the units to unlock some of the other more powerful masteries. It's an exceptionally strong value pickup when it comes to masteries. All right, defensively here, I have the Willpower Mastery and the prerequisite points to put points into Willpower. The reason why I have Willpower is mostly to balance out the Suicide Masteries, but not entirely. Even when I'm not running the Suicide Masteries, I typically have Willpower maxed out, just because there's so many other little debuffs that you can take in this game, and just being able to get some health back from them is quite nice. It's not that big of an investment to get Willpower, in my opinion. I do like having a certain amount of points in the defensive tree regardless, so you know, I really think that Willpower in most situations is worth having. I do also have 1 point in Coagulate, and I don't know if I would have this point if I wasn't running Omega Red. This really is an Omega Red thing, where Omega Red has 90% bleed resistance, and if you have this point into Coagulate, that bumps it up to 100% bleed resistance. You still can see the bleed debuff on your buff and debuff list, which is fantastic because the fact that the debuff is still there, but you're not taking any damage from it, means you're still going to gain health back from it with willpower. So it turns bleeds into a complete 100% positive thing when you're playing Omega Red. So great mastery to have that 1 point to Coagulate. It's also not bad for your other champions. You know, for the most part, the biggest portion of health loss when it comes to running suicides is right at the start of the fight when you have both the poison and the bleed on yourself. If you're playing a champion that is immune to one or the other, it's not such a big deal because willpower can pretty much balance out either the poison or the bleed. But because of that reduced healing that you get with having the Liquid Courage debuff on yourself, that poison reduces the amount of health back that you're going to gain from suffering the bleed at the start of the fight, and now you're in a situation where, yeah, you are taking some damage. There's not really a way to avoid that, and Coagulate's just going to help to balance that out a little bit better. I have, in the past, run more than 1 point in Coagulate if I was running champions that were not suicide-friendly at all, but I still wanted suicides for Arena, then I might opt to put 3 points into Coagulate just to help mitigate the damage that you take for all of your champions from that bleed at the start of the fights. But because I am playing mostly suicide-friendly champions, 1 point is good enough. The left half of the defensive tree here, the 15 points needed to unlock willpower. This is kind of my standard build that I've been running for years at this point. I haven't really changed these masteries too much. I love having maxed out block proficiency. I'm pretty much anti-intercept. I'm not a fan of intercepting. I think it adds an unnecessary amount of risk to your fights in most situations. For the most part, to get my openings, I rather just parry or evade a special, or if the enemy is stun immune, I'll just block and bait out a heavy attack, and having something like block proficiency to help reduce that damage and just, you know, kind of smooth over the fight for me is fantastic. I pretty much always have 4 points in block proficiency. Recovery is another mastery that I almost always have maxed out. 15% extra, 15% boost to all forms of healing in this game is just lovely, right? I mean, anytime you're healing, you get to save units in a quest, and you can take those saved units and put them elsewhere, and just help your overall progression. So, love having recovery maxed out. I have physical resistance maxed out, more so as just, you know, I needed to spend some additional points in this tree in order to have the 15 needed to unlock willpower. But physical resistance is not bad at all. It reduces the overall damage that you take from physical attacks. Gee, I can't even remember now. I think it was about 6.5 to 7%, something like that, which is not bad. That even reduces the damage that you take when blocking, so it just kind of stacks on top of something like block proficiency. And there are certain times where having this physical resistance helps out for other things too, like when you're attacking Korg, the Thorns style damage from attacking into him is physical damage, so you even reduce some of that here as well. Not all attacks in this game are physical based, some are energy based, but the reason why I have more points in physical resistance than I do energy resistance is that most energy based attacks are a little bit more avoidable. Think about things like Iron Man's special ability. It's not that difficult to evade and just completely eliminate suffering any damage, right? You don't really need any resistance if you're not getting hit. It's not always like that. I definitely still get nailed by a lot of specials, a lot of energy damage. Certain champions just have energy damage for the regular attacks as well. But hey, we only get so many points, right? So I think physical resistance is just the more necessary mastery in this case. When it comes to the proficiencies, I have to have enough points to have the Scouter Lens mastery unlocked. Scouter Lens is such a powerful mastery when it comes to Alliance Wars, and even though I'm not really too focused on Alliance Wars at the moment, it's just nice to be able to use the Scouter Lens tools to see who you're going up against in Alliance War, or even if you're not turning to the Scouter Lens tools, because for the most part, I don't. Most part, I have this mastery so that I could see what rank of champion that I'm fighting up against. If I'm going up against a rank 4 champion and I'm using my own rank 5 champions, then I could be a little bit more confident. I maybe don't have to heal up as much. I don't have to boost up as much. I can handle that fight, right? But if I see that it's a rank 5 champion and, looking at the profile, I could see it's going to be a powerful defender or something like that, then I know what to expect going to that fight. To have that information ahead of time for only 1 point, Scouter Lens is an amazing mastery. Now, the points needed to get to Scouter Lens, because I think you need 11 points to unlock Scouter Lens here. All of these are very powerful as well, and even if I didn't have Scouter Lens in the build, I might still have these points here anyway. Of course, I have the 1 point in Dexterity, which is pretty much required. I have maxed out Parry, which you really only need 1 point in this mastery, but I do like having 3 points in it for the extra damage reduction. Some of the enemies in this game hit very hard, especially in like the later days of Alliance Quest, or in some of the later quests in this game, like in Act 6. Where that extra damage reduction from parry, it just helps to save resources. And again, saving resources just helps your overall progression in this game, right? I have maxed out Stupefy. This I feel like is essentially required, especially even for just something like Arena, where the enemies might be running Limber, or Alliance War, where the enemies are running Limber. To have that extra 0.5 seconds of stun is fantastic. It's basically needed to get your openings. Helps out against Limber nodes as well, and it helps out if you are using special attacks that have stuns to them, where you can get in extra attacks while they're stunned, and maybe get in 2 combos where you could have only gotten 1 combo if you didn't have Stupefy. So for only 3 points, I feel like that mastery is basically essential. Limber, I like to have Limber maxed out. This helps my Alliance War defenders, which, again, even though we're not that focused on Alliance Wars, sometimes it is nice to pick up a win if we can, even if we're not focused on it, just collect some easy shards, right? And also, I like to have Limber just in general for even something like Arena. There are times where I'll mess up, run into the enemy, they parry me, and just having Limber can sometimes mean the difference between life and death. And yeah, when I don't get stunned, this isn't exactly helping to speed up my Arena rounds, but if I lose an Arena round, well, that's way worse than maybe the tiny fractions of seconds or minutes that I'll save by putting these mastery points elsewhere. I'd rather just have more consistent wins in the Arena, and that's what maxing out Limber can do for me. So a great overall mastery right there as well. Also helps with some other difficult nodes that you may find out there, like Encroaching Stun. It can definitely save you just in general questing environments as well. So there we go. There is my current mastery build. Again, I'm mostly running suicide-friendly champions, and that's why I have the suicide masteries, along with the focus that we're shifting away from Alliance War and more onto other areas of the game, which has allowed me to put more time into something like Arena, and I just want to get as many rewards as possible for the amount of time put into the game. I will change this build going forward at some point, I can guarantee you that. If I ever decide to play a more bleed-focused champion, which, hey, Venom the Duck has some bleeds, and as some of you know, I just pulled a Venom the Duck, and I love that champion, so it's possible that I may switch to having deep wounds in the build at some point. Or if a powerful Mystic champion comes out, maybe I'll pop some points in Mystic Dispersion. So as the build updates, or as I update the build here, I'll also update you guys with what I'm running. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.